Some waves. That's nice. Hi, Rachel. We are going into something completely different tonight. We've had heaps of protocols and formattings and all of those sorts of things, but it's not often that we give ourselves the permission to kind of turn inwards to have a little look at what, so how we can align in our own truth in the presentation of our practitionership and our service. So we'll be doing a little bit of a different process tonight, and there's going to be no teaching from me. There is no knowledge that I'm going to be imparting on you. This is a process that's going to more allow you to reflect and engage and connect into your own knowledge that wants to be awakened today. So I'm going to get my screen shared to get set up. Hugo invited me or asked me if I wanted to speak during the webinar series, and whilst I have some protocols in the pipeline, there is nothing that is nearly ready to share with you that would be any benefit. So I suggested that we'd look at a more practical side of things with a business sense. And this is kind of what downloaded from that invite. So it's not a presentation or a webinar that I've presented before. It's just what's come down. There's no research in it. There's nothing that I've sourced information from. It's just what is wanting to be kind of presented to you. So just like in a kinesiology session, this session will meet you wherever you're at. You'll get out of it whatever you're needing to get out of it. Karma's brought you here for whatever reason. So whether you've been a practitioner for 30 years, whether you're new to it, there's something that is wanting to brush up against you. There's something that's wanting to be received from the session. So that's the process. Let it meet you where you're at. There's no desired outcomes or success measurements from learning anything today. There's no dogma. There's no framework we're trying to fit you into. This is essentially just allowing you to show up where you're at and receiving what it is that you're wanting to receive. So that's the process that we'll move through. That word service, I've titled the webinar Service-Led Practitioner. It can sometimes have an ugly connotation to it, can't it? There's a sense of transaction that can often happen from servitude, or an inferiority, or giving something away, or being weakened, or being exhausted. And the main kind of focus of this webinar is going to allow us to relate or to have a relationship with that idea of service that's much more nourishing and sustainable for both ourselves, you know, in our success of our business, but also then in how we impart our beautiful medicine to our clients. So we're going to really dance with that relationship with service and allow ourselves to kind of align with that from an energetic point of view. For those people that love a bit of the Chinese medicine, that servitude comes under the umbrella of the triple heater or the triple warmer energy. And the more functional we are, you know, in that energy, that fire energy, the more we're able to show up to be really effortless in that service. So that's kind of what we're aligning to. We've got a bit of the pericardium energy coming in there, which allows us to be very, when it's balanced, very generous with the time and the wisdom that we share to our clients. And also that idea of responsibility, you know, the ability to carry the responsibility of our business, our clients, our own management of self. So it's kind of the direction we're heading. From a chakra point of view, the balance comes in a myriad of different chakras in how they present to our success as a practitioner. I'm probably a heart-led. I would call myself a heart-led practitioner, because that's where I've had most of my woundings. You know, the wounding in your chakras allow you to get the asset. They become an asset when you're able to transmute them. So my samskaras have always been around rejection and abandonment. So that allows me to show up in my sense of service in that space of that heart space, which is typically the healer space. But then, you know, there's the activism that comes from the throat chakra. There's the creatives that come from the sacral chakra woundings. There's the leaders that come from the solar plexus woundings. So we have all of those different interfaces with the chakra energy too, that allows us to show up in our sense of service. If you're not heart-led, it doesn't mean you're not in the right kind of occupation of practitionership in whatever modality you're doing. You know, I know a lot of kinesiologists that are hugely, you know, huge activists, throat-led people. So we have bits and bobs of each of those chakric energies that allow us to align. But the message there is that our deepest woundings, or where we've been most schooled in those areas of our energetic body, are often our greatest assets too. So that's what we're wanting to align with. So the format of tonight's session, let me get this technology working. We're going to be looking at kind of 10 10 contemplations, 10 themes, 10 slides, essentially, broken into those 3 categories. You, so how we, align with self, the environment, the space, the platform that we work from, and the way we interface with clients. So we're going to be spending most of the time in that top one, how we align with our sense of truth in order to impart that medicine, because everything flows down from that. So many of us can get drawn into the latest courses, the latest frameworks, the blueprints, how our peers are doing it, how our mentors told us to do it. But that doesn't allow room for us to really impart our own uniqueness into that. So the lower two, the environment and the client facing stuff, we're not going to spend a lot of time on tonight, because that really is going to be what is expressed and projected from the alignment with your truth. So we want to work from top down. There's heaps of noise out there around your environment, your space, client facing structures and systems. So we're not going to dance too much with that tonight, but certainly give you some promptings and some reflections. There will be some inquiry-based work tonight, so meet that where you want to meet it. There will be some energetic transmissions. There'll be some processes that you're welcome to dive into. If you are cooking dinner while you're listening to this, which I've done on a few occasions listening to these webinars, you're probably not going to be in the state where you can drop in, or if you're driving for some reason, but just meet and join into these processes wherever you want to. There's no rules, there's no right or wrong. If you're watching this on replay, you've got the great ability to use that pause button. And if you're live with me now, jump back onto the replay if you want to dig deeper into some of the processes that we're going to be moving through. So let's get started. This first contemplation, wounds versus wisdom, we wouldn't be attracted to this service-oriented work if it weren't for our own journey. We know all that. We've been gifted different samskaras, different wounds, different imperfections that have led us to deep conditioning, traumas, limiting beliefs, experiences, parents, all the different ways in which we've been brought here to experience the depth of this human existence through pain, suffering, woundedness. And that always drives us to that point of seeking healing. And it's that transactional, that transmutation that allows our healing, our wounds to become wisdom, that is so crucial in our success as a practitioner. So often when we're still in that ego-led seeking part of us, when we're still really deeply ingrained in our narratives, we can find that things aren't as smooth as they need to be. We can get into our own way and become really good sabotagers. So a lot of the work tonight is going to be helping you find that center of the fulcrum, that you can witness the journey that you've walked to allow your medicine to be extracted, and begin to face in the opposite direction that allows that medicine to be imparted. And it's not linear. I mean, I've simplified that as turning away from your experience and where you've done all that deep learning, extracted all that gold, and then starting to look at what that gold is reflecting you to offer the world. It's not as linear as that, but we want to get you to that point of that recognition that service-led practitionership in a way that's nourishing and sustaining is going to be around where that gold can be imparted, rather than the constant seeking for that sense of validation that can often leave us full of doubt and exhausted. So we're going to do a process now. This is the first kind of process, inquiry process, to get us aligned with getting to that point. So I'm going to take you through, well, I'm going to call it a visualization, but if you're not a visual person, that doesn't matter. Just allow it to move through you as it needs to. You can close down your eyes if you wish to help this practice. You can allow yourself to just simply listen. You don't have to do any of what I've told you to do, but we're just going to go through a process to firstly acknowledge and to recognize that path that we've walked, to begin to extract our own unique medicine that we're here to serve with. So just centering now. If you'd like to, I'm going to probably shut down my eyes. I tend to do that when I'm doing this work, but you do whatever you need to do. So just allowing yourself to come into your body and just connecting into my words, whether that allows a visualization to come from those words or simply listening, sensing, feeling, it doesn't matter. And I just first want you to acknowledge, without judgment, in a really safe way, The path that you've walked, I want you to really allow yourself to acknowledge that deep karma that you've signed up for, that you've chosen. Allow yourself to acknowledge the different pain points, the different patterns, the different ways that your samskara has shown up for you. Just allowing that to be, just acknowledging it with absolute compassion and gratitude. And we're going to see that experience, all that we've walked, in kind of a culmination, like see it like a cloud formation. Just allow it to be in front of you. Allow yourself to witness what the journey has been for you. And I'm now going to ask you to imagine a funnel, a funnel that we'd have in the kitchen. I hope that translates for people in other parts of the world. It's round at the top and it kind of narrows down to a funnel or a nozzle at the bottom. I want you to imagine that. We're going to dump all of our cumulative experience of everything that we've walked into the top of that funnel. And we're going to let gravity begin to move it down. And as gravity pulls it down to the narrowing of that funnel, there's a change of state that begins to happen. So our energy, that experience of all that we've walked, begins to emulsify, begins to liquefy. And this process of changing of state and transmutation begins to happen. At this very point, we begin to allow, and the allowing is the important word there, for our pain to become our purpose, our potency. We're going to allow, through that funneling process, for our suffering to become substance, to be of service. And we're going to allow our wounds to transmute into wisdom, all of that lead into gold, all of those different ways that we hear the transmutation happen. This is alchemy. And as that change of state begins to turn into that liquid that goes down the final end of the nozzle, that becomes the life force energy that runs through our being. It's imparted within us. It becomes the nectar or the elixir that is our potent medicine to serve with. If it had not been for the journey we've walked, we would not be able to extract all of that we can now show up and serve with. So allowing that process to land. And this becomes our unique medicine. This is the distillation of our medicine that we are here to serve with, that has come from our unique journey, not from anyone else's, not from our mentors, our teachers, our friends, our peers. This is what we are here to uniquely present with. And there are hummingbirds that want your nectar. I want to make that really clear. There are hummingbirds that want your nectar, the experience, the unique experience that you've walked. And that is how we raise the consciousness of the planet. When we're able to extract our unique medicine to serve with, it's a ripple effect, isn't it? We allow the people to find us that need that, and the process happens in that way. It's a beautiful way that we can individually create a difference on this planet. It's potent medicine that we serve with. So now that we've extracted and distilled that medicine, I'm going to ask this inquiry of you, and this is going to ask you to think of 3 things. So you can write them down, or you can just allow them to drop in. Again, if you're a person that wants to write things down, go for it. If you're just happy to let it fall in, be with it what it needs to be. But here's the 3 questions that I want you to distill, I want you to extract. When you are showing up with that unique medicine running through you, when it is so effortless that it's simply, breathing is enough to impart that medicine to your clients, what are 3 things that your clients feel when they are in your energy, when you're not trying, when you're not trying to be the best or to be perfect or to show up how they want you, when you're just being you effortlessly with that energy flowing through you? What are 3 things that people, your clients, will feel when they're around you? So just allow yourself to sit with that. Jot it down. If it lands, maybe your clients feel safe when they're in your energy, when you're just being you. Maybe they feel heard. Maybe they feel inspired. Just allow the distillation of your unique medicine to land and how that's imparted to your clients. And just reflect on that. And I'm going to feed this back to you, and I want you to kind of feel how it feels to have that medicine fed back to you. So when you are being effortlessly you, when you are doing nothing more than aligned with your unique nectar, when you're just breathing, your clients feel A, and just feel that back to yourself. They feel B, and they feel C. And just notice how that is reflected to you. Notice how that feels. Notice how somatically that lights up in your body. Does it feel amazing to hear that, to acknowledge that in yourself, that your clients feel a certain way when you're around them? Does it feel overwhelming? Does it feel liberating? Does it feel, yeah, that makes sense. It's something that I impart effortlessly without even trying. That's how we can be service-led. That's how we can offer the clients that are looking for our medicine what it is that they're here to serve with. So now that we understand that our unique medicine is distilled from this process of our own journey and our wounds and our own experience, we need to look deeper into the mechanisms that could potentially distract us from expressing our purpose. And the ego is what we are all familiar with, those narratives, those voices, the noise that gets in the way of us really being able to align with our truth. And we know that comes from the limbic brain. And I call the limbic brain the teenage brain because it is seeking merely the security and identity. You know, our baby brain, our reptilian brain's all about safety and survival and breathing and sleeping. But then we evolve into this part of the brain that's just wanting to feel like we fit in. So we create narratives and stories to find that sense of validation and security. And we will always seek the evidence that prove those narratives correct. And they can be what interfere with the ability to really align with our truth and to hear the voice of our intuition. So when we are ego-led in our practitionership, we can find ourselves deeply connected into doubt, which we all have. So this isn't, again, it's not linear. This comes in and floats in and out. But it's important for us to recognize when we are in that limbic hijacking or that limbic looping and that dysregulation, to notice how it does impact our sense of service and showing up. So we might feel anxious, we might feel full of self-doubt, there might be a lot of noise, we might have that diminished intuition, we might be seeking validation, did I do a good enough job? Did I give the results I needed to for my client? Are they happy with my service? And it becomes exhausting because we're connected into that really simplified teenage brain of just seeking that need to feel that we're safe and that we've got a sense of purpose and validation and value in the world. So allowing ourselves to clear that is really important into being able to connect into our intuitive voice and being aligned with the way that we show up to impart that medicine. So our truth can't be judged because of that, So often we've spent our life on stage full of props that we've thought have made us feel safer and given us a sense of purpose. Those props might be a nice house and a happy bank account and a loving partner. We have different actresses and actors on that stage too that create a sense of identity and connection to the world. But they're kind of temporary. We can't rely on those things all the time. We have a script often that we're running based on society or cultural expectations of us, based on our own expectations of running a business as a practitioner. But it all is noise, and we get tired of it because those limbic stories and narratives end up making us feel stuck. We can only get to a certain place with those stories. There's the next expression of our full truth needs to happen without the ego dominating, seeking that safety and truth, safety and identity. So the next evolution is to that conscious part of our mind, the smart part of our brain that allows us to see things with more compassion and clarity. And that's the direction we need to get in. But first we need to unhook those narratives and loops that we find ourselves in. So we clear the stage, we get rid of the props. We realize that the actors and actresses are not necessary. We don't even need the script. We can rip that up. Who says that we need to follow a certain protocol to be anything? Our truth is enough. We don't even care who is or isn't in the audience. We don't care how many followers we have in our social media. And we can't be reviewed. Our truth can't, there's no comparison. We can't be reviewed based on our performance yesterday. It's always going to be unique to the expression of our truth that we need to show up for. So clearing that stage, standing there naked, raw, and just allowing yourself to be who you are without needing that sense of safety and identity, which was a beautiful mechanism of of our evolution, but can get in the way of us really showing up to be of service to our clients and the way that we want to impart our purpose into the world. So the next little inquiry process we're going to do is called familiar and foreign. So if you're a jotter, if you've got a pen and paper, we're going to get 2 columns on that paper. So we're going to have a column that has familiar as its heading, and we're going to have a column that has foreign as its heading. If you're not a jotter downer, and if you're just wanting this to work through you as you're sitting here, that's fine too. You can just do it visually in your mind, or you can just simply listen and not do this process. As I said before, just show up how you want to show up. There's no rules. So in that familiar column, this is what we want to do. I want you to write down or recognize what behaviors, beliefs, feelings, attitudes, processes that you are so sick and tired of feeling day after day in your practitionership. So maybe it's that constant doubt that plagues you when you wake up in the morning thinking about the clients that are ahead of you. Maybe it's that exhaustion that you feel. Maybe it's that sabotaging of not believing that you're good enough. Just think of the patterns that continually go around and round, that you are so sick and tired of feeling and experiencing and managing and carrying. Just notice without judgment what the feelings are that are clearly in the way of you showing up as you desire to do. And just noticing those again without judgment. What is in the way? What are those familiar patterns and beliefs and hijacking tools that are stopping you from being as productive as you like? Just notice. And when you've landed into some of them, you might have a whole list, you might have just a couple, you might have one really loud one. Just notice with compassion, again, I keep saying that, without judgment, that those are the mechanisms that your beautiful nervous system or the ego chose and determined that was the best way for you to adapt and survive in this scary world of business and showing up every day for clients. That was the way that your nervous system deemed you to feel safe in your expression of stepping out into your truth and your medicine. It's a scary thing for our nervous system to go, off you go, Sarah, do your thing, you're fine. No, you've got it. That's not designed to do that. It's designed to wave the red flags, and it's designed to allow you to search for that evidence that creates that narrative of, no, I can't do this. So just notice first, the things that you wrote down in that familiar column are just the ego's way of protecting you and keeping you safe. But they're coming redundant, aren't they? They're hitting their use by date. They're keeping you stuck, and they keep you in that seeking, that searching, that grasping for that external validation of, I'm okay. And there's only so far that teenage brain will take you before it gets in the way of you stepping into your truth, as we've already said. So let's see if we can move beyond that evolutionary part of our nervous system into this smart brain that we all have. We want to utilize it a bit more. We want to turn the noise up in that aspect of our brain. We want to sit with absolute clarity and compassion around what we're here to serve with in our truth. So in that foreign column now, begin to explore, and you might be doing this, it just might not happen as much and often as you like, the beliefs, the attitudes, the feelings, the experiences that you want to sit into that are way more expansive and aligned with how you want to show up in your practice. So that might be as simple as, I need to move my body and get the blood flowing before I show up to my practitionership, before I show up to my day. That is going to allow me to be more expansive and aligned with my truth. I'm going to allow myself to connect with my breath. I'm going to allow myself to, wear a talisman that's going to, like, what is going to align you, that's going to allow those beliefs, those attitudes, those patterns, those experiences to be way more expansive in the way that you're showing up. And if you've got a little muscle test handy, if you're one of those people that have a quick muscle test, have a look at those things that you've downloaded around what you're really wanting to step into that feels way more expansive in alignment into your truth in terms of the beliefs and the practices. And just see if there's any that are showing any weaknesses. Check in whether you feel safe to do that, whether you're going to allow yourself to do that, whether you're ready to do that in terms of your work. And we'll come back to those, or you can come back to those after this webinar and see if you've been able to integrate that as we bring you more into alignment with your truth. So notice the familiar stuff that's outdated, that is just an expression of your nervous system wanting to keep you safe. And then moving into that part of your nervous system that is more evolved, that can see the truth, that can base itself in fact, and also can be receptive rather than seeking. This part of your brain allows yourself to receive. It allows yourself to magnetize everything that is desiring to come towards you, the right clients, the right space to work from. All of those things, you'll be in that mindset or that nervous system response to receive, which is a really nice place to be. So is it even possible to be in this egoless state when we practice? Like, how can we be that beautiful conduit and limit the noise and allow our intuition? And that, you know, is it just a fairy tale that we can actually show up and be in this space to hold for clients in that effortless way? Can it be nourishing rather than exhausting? And I'm sure you've all had those experiences where that's the case, where it is deeply nourishing and energizing and beautiful, and that's how we want it to be all the time. And you know, as you would have had clients ask you after a session, was that exhausting? Like, are you okay? And I get embarrassed because I always feel, no, it wasn't. It wasn't exhausting. It was deeply nourishing. And I could never explain that. And then one day, early on in my kinesiology career, is that what you call it? I came up with this analogy, and it kind of made sense to me that there's a part of this work that allows you to leave yourself out of the door. Like, Sarah can stay home. And that doesn't mean I'm not showing up in my humanness, because as we learned from that first process, my humanness is what enables me to have the medicine that I impart. But what it does allow me to be is completely, you know, a conduit, an empty space to receive the work, to intuit, to download, to be in that person's energy to do the work. So that's the analogy that best serves that. You know, as soon as the day's finished, I can walk out and be back in Sarah land and deal with my ego and all the crappy things. But this idea that, you know, and it's not putting on a cape, because we're not, you know, any Superman's the wrong context in terms of thinking that you're a superhuman and be able to do this. But it's just the analogy that I found really helped in understanding the role that you have in showing up. And this became really, and you guys would know this, it became really obvious when you go through the shitty things in life. Like, since I've been practicing, I've been through some, as you would have had as well, crazy life stuff that you have to deal with. There's been times that I've been crying at my desk 5 minutes before a client comes in. But there's something that happens when you have that belief of moving into this egoless space, that as soon as that client walks in the door and you sit down, something happens, you know. And it allowed me to understand that no matter what was happening in my human world, that I had that ability to show up. And it is possible to create that beautiful conduit space. And I know you all know that. And that's what we're wanting to kind of get to, that point, to be really comfortable in that. And it is like building a muscle, and we'll talk about that more a bit later on. But it's where we can really listen and hear the intuition. Hugo talks about it all the time. He's an example of that. You know, he always talks about how grateful he is to be connected to his crown chakra when he's downloading all of his protocols and his work. But we also know Hugo and his humanness, and the separation of that is just as much as we need to be separated in the ability to hold space for clients versus the type of person we are when we're out there in the world. You know, we don't have to be ourselves, you know. That's where it gets a bit dodgy, isn't it? We're still our humanness, because the gifts that we are imparting on our clients are because of the path that we walked. But we don't have to bring all of our baggage into the space. And that separation in a healthy way is vital in the ability for you to show up to clients. So recognize that little hijacking that can take place. Maybe you recognize that alter ego that can show up. And again, it often comes back to that anxiety, that doubt, that weariness. So the next process is just inviting you to recognize that part of you that shows up every now and then, that gets in the way, that might diminish the noise. So think about her or him. Think about that person. And without judgment again, write down, if you're a jotter, if you're just a thinker, think, what would the crack that they appear in when you're working. So again, maybe it comes down to that hypervigilance, looking for the body language or the eye contact to see if that client is responding. Maybe it's the constant worry about what your clients are thinking or what people are thinking or however that's happening. Maybe you feel rushed, because you're in that hyper arousal and everything speeds up, probably like I'm speeding up really now with my speech. What if you, that controlling part of you comes into a session when you're hijacked, you're like, no, my bias suggests that I need to be doing this for the client. Maybe you're analytical and judgy of yourself in those moments. So again, allow yourself that opportunity to reflect on where that hijacked alter ego may present themselves in your work. And maybe it's when you're doing the initial chat. Maybe when you get up on the table to do your work, everything just goes to normal. Just notice where those cracks are in your process that could potentially allow that alter ego to come in and affect and diminish your ability to hear your intuition and to hold space with the client. And when you look at that part of you that you've just recognized, acknowledge that that's the really scared, wounded part of you. And she's showing up for a reason, or he's showing up for a reason. I'm using my pronoun, sorry. They often show up because they're having a tantrum. They're demanding that center stage. They are seeking a need to be met, and they find any opportunity, particularly the opportunities when we're about to step into our full flight and potential. They want to pull us back and go, hang on a minute, how dare you take flight when there's a need not met? So that part of you that shows up, that alter ego, that wounded part of you, she's just scared. I'll keep using my pronoun. And she'll keep showing up until her needs are met in all sorts of different ways. We're talking solely in the kind of the practitioner lens here, but you'll see it in your own world as well. And there's only one person that can meet the needs of that wounded, scared part. And there's no guessing who that is. It's not going to be anything that's externally derived, like a full client load or, a sustainable business from a monetary standpoint, incredible Facebook reviews. Those things aren't going to meet the needs of that scared, wounded part of ourselves that's coming to hijack our sessions. They have to be met by just that love, that attention. When we begin to show up and advocate for that wounded part of ourselves, more space is then created for the adult, self-honoring adult, aligned truth version of us to arrive. So acknowledge that wounded, scared part of ourselves that can inhibit. So maybe you don't even notice it yet. Maybe it's very unconscious within you. But this is an opportunity just to recognize, is there a part of me with unmet needs that are hijacking my ability to show up in this way for my clients? And what does she need? So just acknowledging that. We're not going to go any deeper into that, but it's a part of ourselves that we need to check in with, to see if there is anything that's getting in the way of us showing up in that egolessness state. So let's look at some practical steps now. Showing up for service in alignment with our truth is one thing, but developing that muscle that allows us to do it day after day, client after client, is a completely another thing altogether. So how do we build that muscle? How do we sustain this ability to show up in alignment with our truth, to continually imparting the unique medicine that we, is that even possible? Is it sustainable and deeply nourishing? And so we need to look at the blocks that get in the way, and all of those exercises that we've just done previously are going to help identify where some of that work can be done. We need to do the work, we need to show up just as much as us for ourselves as we do for our clients. And that doesn't mean that you need to crack the whip and, if I'm going to show up to clients, I need to do my daily practice. It doesn't necessarily need to be so disciplined as that, but there needs to be that intention around noticing the blocks, noticing the BS stories, noticing the limitations, the limbic looping, the dysregulation, and showing up for that just as much as we ask our clients to show up for all of that as well. It's a reflection of that It's very holographic. You know, there's so many holograms that are running through the way that we work, and the way that the clients receive that work too. And once we get into the habit of pushing through these blocks, we build that resilience. You know, you develop that faith, you develop that fitness. The ego, when those blocks appear, will always project that brick wall. We'll always see a brick wall. We will always see a massive hurdle handbrake when we are in that ego narrative, when we're in that limbic dysregulation. The ego is never going to say, Sarah, off you go. There's the green light. Climb the brick wall. Get over it. There's good stuff on the other side. It's never going to give you permission to move forward. It will project that brick wall and prove you right to stay behind that brick wall for as long as it can. That's its job. You know, it just tends to be really loud. And when we're standing looking at our future, or looking at our day, or looking at the client through that limbic lens, through that ego lens, we will always see the brick wall. It's what will be projected. But when we're able to stand towards our day, whether that's be 5 clients, whether that, you know, whatever it is, through the lens of our truth, we realize that that brick wall is merely an illusion. It's a projection of the ego. It will never tell us we're ready. So we need to be smarter than the egoic projections. We need to continue to take those small, tiny steps towards the expression of our higher sense of service, to show up for our clients regardless of the projection of that ego. So that resilience is a muscle that we build. You know, it's just like training for a marathon. We get better and better at it. It has to be something that we keep facing up to. And for a bit of a context for me, I rented this commercial space without any clientele. So I threw myself into my business with a overhead, I think that's what you call it. Don't ask me for financial advice. Without a business. So those early days when I felt shit and when I had crazy life circumstances happening, you know, I didn't want to show up. I really didn't, but I had no choice because I had to pay for the rental space. And, you know, you push through it and you make do, and everyone else has their own handbrakes and what's projected to you for that reason to say, stop, no, that brick wall's too much. You know, sometimes our ego stories are so believable. You know, if I took those ego stories that it's trying to tell me to a judge, it would go, oh, Sarah, I rule in your favor. There is, you know, I think you're deemed just to stay stuck. Like, we are so powerful in those stories, and it's pushing through that and building the muscle, getting up to go to the gym when you don't want to. You just have to do that. It's just trusting in the process. Notice fatigue when it does come in, because it is always going to be an indication or a barometer, isn't it, that there's something out of alignment, out of whack. But don't blame the client for that. There's so often you hear us, oh, that client was, oh my goodness, there was just so much going on for her. And it's nothing to do with the client. When we're aligned with that beautiful fire energy, that pericardium energy, that triple heater energy, that sense of being able to hold that space and be of service doesn't ever take anything from you. So be mindful that if there is fatigue, there's probably something that is worth identifying in you, you know. And a bit of a sidetrack that just downloaded, don't be, you know, find a naturopath, find a nutrition, like there's so many of our blocks in terms of fatigue and be able to show up mentally that are around all of, you know, the functionality of our neurotransmitters, you know, all of that stuff, nutrients. And, you know, I'm getting into territory that I don't have a lot of experience with, but, you know, find the support that you need to allow yourself to show up with the vehicle that is best going to support the expression of that medicine. So invest in that. Don't just think that you've got to do energy work always. You know, that's a beautiful bonus that you have access to, but get the support that allows you to show up with that fine-tuned engine yourself. Don't blame the client, as easy as that can be. It takes time. We've got to build those new neural pathways. Remember the effortlessness in that ego wanting to go, nah, too tired, had a shitty sleep, I really got to cancel my clients tonight, or whatever those stories are for you. Keep building those neural pathways and pushing through. You'll be rewarded. You know, things happen organically. You'll know what you can handle, but just trust in your resilience and your robustness that you can move forward. So the little inquiry process that we're going to do around this is the last inquiry process we've got. So this is the last bit of the intense effort that I'm trying to extract from you through this process. I want you to reflect on when your business, your practice is going really well. I want you to find yourself connected to that flow. You know, there's clients showing up, they're repeating their bookings, you're feeling amazing, you've got the energy, you feel great after sessions. There's a lot of obvious ways in which you feel balanced and grounded, and just find and reflect on when you're in that mode. It comes and goes. And I want you to think of what your non-negotiables are when you're in that flow. So when everything's going right, what do your routines look like when you're doing that? So maybe it's you've got the blood flow happening before you've started your sessions. You know, you've moved, you've danced, you've shaken things out. Maybe it's been that time when you're doing your meditation practice. And, you know, it doesn't have to be all the spiritual aspects of what those non-negotiables look like. Maybe you sprayed a mist around you before the start of a session, but think of what were the things that you were doing that allowed you to access that level of flow and success in your business. And once you've thought about those non-negotiables, and you could be doing it all the time, it could be something that's your routine that you show up for every beginning of a session, but think of those non-negotiables that permit you to have that flow, and see them like the bottom of the pyramid, that widest part of the pyramid, the most foundational, the most structural, the most load-bearing part of the pyramid. Create a pyramid shape here. And allow those non-negotiables to be the seeds of your practice, your service. And when we sow those seeds into the bottom of the pyramid, we allow that to be where our focus is. We water that part of the pyramid. We focus on those non-negotiables. We feed that. And when we allow ourselves to focus just on those things, the basics, how those seeds sprout isn't as important. You know, they'll sprout, give us what we need, not what the ego demands. But when we're solely allowing the base level of our pyramid, those needs to be met there from a non-negotiable point of view, just watch how those seed blooms to the expression of that full, you know, potent projection emission of the medicine that we're here to serve with. So to help you build that practitioner muscle, allow yourself to connect to what are your non-negotiables that provide that really firm base in which you sprout from. That's where you need to feed your energy. That's the investment. Don't worry about up here and, you know, how that looks. Just put the energy downwards into the non-negotiables that give you the perfect platform to show up for. When you're doing that, everything will be as it needs to be for the client, for yourself, for your experience. You're getting what you need out of it. So let's be smart on how we help ourselves out here. You know, these are all these little things that I've got dot pointed here. Like, it reminds me of the real metal energy from Chinese medicine, the real, when it's in balance, that beautiful discipline that allows us to have a structure and a support and to be really scaffolded. It's not metal energy that's imbalanced, which is like a brick wall that's constrictive and rigid and inflexible. So we need to think about our service nature is our commodity. So we need to build structures and systems that support and work for us around that. Our service nature is our commodity. We need to help ourselves out. So, you know, how do you format your day? What does that look like? I mean, I started at the very beginning of my career. I don't feel it's weird to say that, but whatever I'm here showing up to do at this point in my life, kinesiology, with 30-minute breaks between clients. And it's something I've kept forever. And I still do it, 30 minutes between clients. And, you know, the business mindset could be like, oh, but Sarah, you could see more clients, or you could shorten your days. But it's something it's really assisted the flow of my work. And I don't always like talking about myself, but that 30 minutes, and I always tend to go 5 or 10 minutes over. So, you know, good that I've got that time. But in that 30 minutes, I can do everything. I can take a sip of water, I can go to the bathroom, I can clear the space, I can do all the processes that I do, and we'll talk about that later. I can sit down, and there's never, because I don't have the luxury of a waiting space, and my front door is my door into the studio, there's never a crossover of clients. And the experience the clients have is that they come into this space feeling like no one else has been there, because, you know, I puff up the cushions and like there's no evidence that anyone has been in that space energetically and physically. And that's something that I feel works for the process, not only for me, because it's like a beautiful clean slate for every session, but it's something that I've danced with and thought, you know, I could shorten my days because 30 minutes between clients makes my days longer, but it's just something I'm not prepared to give up. So I'm not going to be swayed by the whole but money, but, you know, that's an important part of helping me in the projection of my service. So that could be helpful. Obviously, all of the different systems that we have in place, whether they be techie systems or other processes, they're really important for you to reflect upon. How you cap the number of clients. I now cap my clients at 5 clients a day. I work 5 days a week. I used to look to do 6, but that I just decided that wasn't fun. I mean, I could do it, but 5 just seemed a happy space. I can see some chat stuff coming up, but I'm not going to, engage in that. Please excuse me if I'm not looking at that. So yeah, number of caps, clients, days, they're all going to be individual to you. So that comes back to when we were talking about that top-down approach at the very beginning. If you're even hearing me talk about what works for me, the 30 minutes and the 5, that doesn't mean it fits into your blueprint. It must come down from that unique expression of your medicine. So please never allow yourself to feel compelled to fit into any framework or blueprint that is not aligned with your own expression of your medicine. So if that's working 2 days, 2 clients, you know, that's where you're at. For me, it built to that place where it's a fitness now that I can manage seeing 25 clients a week, and that's what it is. It's comfortable, and I have no, I don't judge it or anything. It just is, and that'll change one day, and it'll, you know, I'm just showing up. I just show up. So that's I don't tend to put too much energy in, but that 30 minutes between sessions really helped me. So think about how you manage yourself and help yourself out. Energy management, you know, never allow it to come from a fear place or a protective place. Allow your energy to be managed from a place that feels fun and right and full of love. You know, like this room, like this is the space that I practice out of. There's some crazy amount of little processes in here that make this space feel fun and light and happy and anchored and grounded and supportive, but it's never ever comes from a place of, oh shit, I need to spray my energy to clear nasties. It's never that intention. So that's what works for me, and that's how I manage my energy, apart from kind of the breaks and the processes like that. State your boundaries clearly to yourself first. You know, state what is expected of you and how you manage your time, and that will just be a flow-on effect to how your clients receive that energy around your boundaries as well, as it's expressed and imparted from you first. So the reflection in this little contemplation is just to look at your framework. Is it supportive? Is it offering you that beautiful metal energy that acts as a supportive strut, that still has the space? Remember, metal generates water, that still has the space then for that beautiful water, feminine, intuitive, spiritual aspect to come through while still being held in that beautiful support. We must have that framework. So things for you to reflect on. Your space has a heartbeat. It's an organism. It's an extension of your soul. It is an extension of your business essence, your business deva. So we need to feed that organism, and tools and rituals are a wonderful way to allow that space to be deeply sacred. And your clients feel that, you know, you many of you would have that feedback coming from clients of how they feel in your space. And it really allows us to anchor into that sacred space using the tools and the rituals. And it provides a stability and a reliability and a structure. Again, we're coming back to that metal energy. Remember, that's going to always be supportive to our extension of our spiritualness in this work. extension of our soul. So, you know, think about your routines and rituals. Do you stick to them? Do you have discipline around them? Do they help? What processes you do? Do those routines and rituals breed stress? Because like, oh, shit, well, I've got to change my pillowcase and spray and, you know, whatever it is that you do. Or do they breed peace? You know, there's a real choice. Again, ignore the noise that says for every client you need to do this and do that and say a prayer, and you know, it's going to be, it has to be in alignment with what you believe to be true. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute as well. So I'm not OCD, but I love routine. So you could almost put like a record on and see the things that I do before a session, at the beginning of the day, between sessions. And you know, it becomes like a meditation. There's you could almost plot it out, a grid in this space of what I do, how I do it, when I do it, there's so many aspects, and it becomes this beautiful ritual, this reliable tool that becomes as reliable as my breath and my, it's a nice thing to land into. I always show up an hour before my first client, because there's another whole process that I do there. It's fun. I'm never rushed in it. It's a priority to do that, and it's the same every time. It's the same process. I leave intuitive things. There's different essences, different things that I muscle test for, depending on it's not ever the same in that respect. But create that opportunity to nourish and feed that sacred space by that metal element, again supporting you in those routines and rituals that breed peace. And let them be an extension of you, an extension of your business, an extension of how you desire to show up. Don't buy into, having to do a certain thing. The more organic it is, the more it's going to be felt by the people that enter that space. Do you have routines? Do you stick to them? Do they work for you? Do they help? Just acknowledge how they serve you in showing up. Showing up. So this is looking at client-facing issues now. So the way that we present our energy to be what it needs to be. And we know that as a service-led practitioner, we are showing up with that service nature, a genuine desire to serve. We are able to hold that space without validation or expectation. We can be that beautiful conduit. So emptying ourselves to be that clean energy channel is so important. We can have a lot of bias naturally because we're human with our own ego identity, and we've got to be mindful that that doesn't come across in the sessions. And there's this old parable called the street light effect. Many of you would have heard about it. It's a sociological principle, and it's about 100 years old. And there's a story to it. And I'm a crappy storyteller, so if I stuff up the rhythm of trying to tell you this streetlight effect story, my apologies, but you'll get the drift of it. This is how the bias kind of concept can be explained in an analogy. So there's a man looking under the bushes. He's lost something. He's searching for something. He can't find it. It's the middle of the night, and a policeman shows up and says, "Sir, can I help you?" And the man says, "Oh, I've lost my keys. I can't find them." And the policeman says, "Well, when did you last have your keys?" And the man says, "I had them when I got out of my car a couple of hours ago." And the policeman said, "Well, where's your car? I can't see your car." And the man says, "Well, it's 2 blocks that way." And the policeman says, "Well, why are you searching here?" And the man says, "Because underneath the street light, it's brighter here. There's more light." And so that kind of analogy expresses the importance not to find yourself where the things are lit up, where there's clarity that makes sense to your human projection. So if a client comes in and goes, "Oh, I've been battling with this iron deficiency and it's making me feel fatigued and it's affecting my ability to feel calm. And that lights up your own story of your battle with iron deficiency, for example. You've got to be so mindful of subconsciously more than anything, because we're obviously professional practitioners, that we're not going to have that biased lens, but our nervous system may, our subconscious may, and so we're seeing that so lightly lit up. But as you know, particularly in kinesiology, if we put out fires, we're doing a disservice to our client, because they're in control of where they want us to go. We can't buy into that bullshit always. So having that ability to empty, to be that vessel of quiet, of minimal noise, is going to be really important. Ventral regulation, showing up in that ventral state, is massively important. When you're in your own calm state, when you're regulated, the way mirror neurons work, the way that invites the client to subconsciously reach a point of similar regulation is potent in the success of that work. Like, I'm grateful that I have neuroenergetic protocols and tools, because they are massively powerful. But there is a lot to be said as a practitioner to be able to be in that ventral regulation, that state of calmness and peace. And if we're showing up with bias, with noise, with our own humanness, with a lens, we can't create that opportunity for that client to be fed that, to be given that. And it happens organically. It's not, okay, I'm going to connect to my breath and allow that person to be there. But it's part of that Superman concept. It's, as soon as that client walks in the door and you sit down, you have this muscle that immediately switches on to that ability to just be, to hold that space, because there's nothing more expected of you as a practitioner. There is nothing more expected of you than being able to show up and be in that space. The rest flows, the rest just happens. And that's, as a kinesiology practitioner, we're not all kinesiologists in this space tonight. That's the power of then letting go and letting the work meet the client where they're at through that muscle test. Like, we're lucky in that respect. So what can we bring to it? Aside from our humanness and the knowledge and the experience and everything that we've got, we just bring our presence and our love and our unique medicine and all that we can offer. And that's all that we can expect. And that's a powerful state to be. Intention is everything. And that's the other important thing to recognize. You need to invest in what you know is true. Invest in what you know to be true. So if you are someone who has a deep connection to crystal energy, and that's a powerful medicine and tool for you, allow that to be the intention in which you impart your medicine from. If you are someone who is deeply aligned with Reiki, and you know that is intensely powerful to impart, invest your truth into that. If you have neuroenergetic kinesiology protocols at your disposal and you know that they work, invest in what you know to be true and have that intention of allowing that to show up for you. That can be a powerful way of letting the work happen through you as well. Invest in what you know to be true. Show up for that. Draw the line. This is where it gets really interesting, because this is where our ego and our sense of service can be really misconstrued. What's the difference? Where is the line drawn between your responsibility and your client's responsibility? There's so many of us are givers, and we want everyone to feel amazing, and we take on the expectation and the pressure for things to be as they need to be. But make sure you're really clear on, what is your responsibility? What is theirs? I don't give homework, for example. I trust that what is to be integrated through the work will be made known to the client, and that they'll be led when they're ready to integrate the work. Is it your responsibility to have a successful outcome and measure that? Is it your responsibility to send reminder messages? Really get clear on what your role as a service provider is and what the responsibility is the client. Don't carry those expectations, those perceptions of results. So stop and think. So it's a little prompt for you to stop and think about what is your responsibility and what is the client's. they're investing in you. That doesn't mean that you have to feel obliged to give a particular result. It's their responsibility that their karma has drawn them to you, and you know, allow those lines to be really clear on what's the difference between your role and the client's responsibility. So that's just a prompt. Be mindful of overgiving and overserving in compensating for that ego's projection of not enoughness and worth. Remember, that's a sign that we're ego-led rather than truth-led. So the other thing to think about is what happens before and after sessions with clients, not from the ritual routine processes, but with that one individual client. How much are you showing up for that client before a session? You know, what emails are you offering? What space are you offering after a session? You know, be really clear on those boundaries around client communication. How available do you want to be? What is within your limits around expectations? And make sure you communicate that. So for me, at the end of the session, I always say, you know, I'm available for, you know, on email to follow up with any questions you have. I don't pursue them, and that's different for everyone else. I don't send a text message or an email follow up. I never engage that process myself. I express that, communicate that to my clients, that they are permitted to email me with any questions that they have. So that's just a clear boundary. It's going to be different for different practitioners on how they follow up that. But make sure you've got that boundaries on the way that you can communication and the accessibility that you're showing up for around communication with clients. What do you do before a session? How much information do you give them around the session? All of those sorts of things. So the prompt is just to simply check in with what your boundaries are around client communication. How available do you want to be? And what are the expectations and boundaries around that? And then you can't get pissed off and resentful at yourself when those boundaries are not being met. They have to be communicated clearly. Communication's a huge thing. Let your emails have what you want to impart so that they can, and then it's their responsibility to understand that and ask questions, and it makes a more balanced practitioner-client relationship. So prompting there. I've put down at the bottom there, you know, social media marketing, testimonials. I'm not going to speak really on that, but I want you to also just notice the different energies that would come in how you do your social media and marketing based on that ego presentation, that seeking, searching part that we've kind of navigated through tonight, versus when you're showing up in your truth and a light. Like, does that create a different way that you engage with marketing? It could, you know, I've never marketed. I've never invested in anything from that perspective. I've been lucky that word of mouth and referrals have grown my business. But there's an energy that comes with marketing that you want to be mindful of. And all I want to add in there is when you are deeply aligned with the service that you're offering that comes from the distillation of your own unique medicine, the way that you then market and show up on your social media or whatever, it's going to be deeply aligned and connected. And clients, potential clients, they'll feel that and recognize that. It is an extension of your soul, your business, your essence that you're showing up with, your humanness. So, you know, does social media and marketing need to be driven with, proposals of what's it called? You know, the way you want to show. What are you offering? Offerings, that'll do. Or is it a means or a platform to educate, to allow your clients to get to know you a little bit, to see how your brain works, to where you're at? You know, it's a different energy that comes from that ego-led practitioner versus the service-led practitioner when you're coming into alignment. So not going to go any deeper in that, but simply allowing you to think about the way that you're showing up. So the final way that I want to ingrain the work that we've done tonight through this webinar is to reflect on how you would notice when you are around a service-led practitioner. So say you're visiting your osteo or your naturopath or your chiro or your dentist. What is it that you might reflect on, sense, feel, or know that clearly indicates that they're coming from that aligned place? You know, when you've been around people, and maybe just chuck into the chat box, and I'll see if I can engage in that now, a word that you know. So maybe you feel safe. Just throw in a word into the chat box if you're called to. based on what you've experienced when you're around those service-led practitioners that are really aligned with your truth. Because when we see these words that that we're happy to share, you might be able to reflect and see yourself back in those words. So just finally ingraining that concept of showing up in that service-led practitionership by ways that you notice that from others. And so feel free to chuck into the chat box some words that might help you sense when you're around someone who's deeply aligned with their medicine. So that's just some details about me. There's nothing for me to sell. Like, I'm not here to do this introduction to some kind of course or anything like that. I don't have that. But if you want to, check in with me, there's some details. You can find me on all the social media platforms. I am an AIK and AKA accredited mentor, if that is something that you need. But whatever, work with me if that's calling. Otherwise, it's just been a great thrill and pleasure to share this webinar with you. So thank you. And I'll hand it over to Carrie now, and we can do some chatting.